on lands obtained generally in unconscionable ways from indigenous people. The taking of this land was formalized by the Treaty of Detroit in 1807. Knowing where we live, work, study, and recreate does not change the past, but a thorough understanding of the ongoing consequences of this past can empower us in our work to create a future that supports human flourishing and justice for all individuals. Thank you.
Thanks, Galen. Do you want to proceed to the roll call?
Sure. Okay, Commissioner Graham. Commissioner Graham. Commissioner Needham. Commissioner Needham. Councilmember Dish. Councilmember Dish. And I'm going to check the, wait a minute, we got some people waiting to get in.
Yeah.
If it's okay, I want to start over.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Everyone should. Commissioner Graham. Commissioner Graham. Commissioner Needham. Commissioner Needham. Councilmember Dish.
Present from Chicago.
Okay. Commissioner Gibb Randall.
Present in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Griswold.
Present, Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Collywart.
Present, Ann Arbor.
President Brown.
Present in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Mursky.
Present in Ann Arbor.
Vice President Mitchell.
Present in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Vandenbroek. Commissioner Vandenbroek.
Muted. Chris.
Commissioner Vandenbroek.
Okay, here in Ann Arbor. Sorry.
All right. Commissioner Oriole. Commissioner Oriole. And Commissioner Zhang.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Right, we have a quorum.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you, Galen. So let's move on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any, is there a motion to consider the agenda? Okay, from Shannon, seconded by Kathy Griswold. Discussion. Are there any amendments? Is anybody requesting any amendments? Raise your hand. Speak up. By hearing and seeing none. Was the agenda accepted as originally written? Raise your hand. Say aye.
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 All those say no. Anybody who say no? Any abstentions? Hearing and seeing none. The agenda passes unanimously without amendment. So let's pass on to the approval of the minutes from our last July meeting. Let's see. Is there a motion to consider the minutes from our July 24th meeting? I don't see one, but John Mursky.
Motion to accept the minutes.
It's seconded by John Calloward. Any discussion? Anybody, any discussion? Okay, hearing and seeing none. All who approve the minutes as written, as submitted, raise your hand or say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, hearing and seeing none, the minutes are approved unanimously. Let's pass on to public commentary. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. Please call 1-888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 940-0438-4426. This information is also displayed on the meeting agenda and video feed. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sound so that we may hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments, and be patient. There can be a delay of up to 30 seconds before a connection is established. Is there anybody on the line, Galen?
There's no one on the line.
Okay. Let's wait a few minutes then. I mean, a few seconds. So I think that's 30 seconds. Anybody on the line yet?
There's no one on the line.
Okay, then. This ends the public commentary period on the agenda. So I'll proceed to unfinished business. So I would just like to open by saying that I think this is the perfect time for a review of our accomplishments for the last year. What we can consider in terms of improving our work. I think this is probably the best time of year and the best time to approve it as opposed to the end of the year. So, but I'm open to any suggestions. So under unfinished business, I just listed the categories under which we've been, the themes that we're charged with in our bylaws, such as solid waste, water quality, air quality, and we've asterisked the things that are kind of ongoing activities, such as the Gelman update, the phosphorus discharge into the Huron River, and the PFAS. And so I think this is a good time for us all to just discuss what we've done. And I just want to reiterate my feeling that our tangible work products are ordinance drafts, first of all. Like if we can help council and staff draft ordinances to improve the environmental situation in the city here, I think that is our primary work product. The second one would be resolutions in support of actions by council and staff and the community, considering members of the community. And I feel like this forum is kind of the most logical forum for integrating input from both the community members, through all of our connections and our networks within the community in general, and with council and with city staff, and to try to help improve city government and provide a forum for discussion and action. So, so with that in mind, just looking over what we've done for the last year, we haven't really completed drafting any ordinances in this year. Of course, it's been a pandemic year. We have issued a number of resolutions, particularly, last fall, we were occupied with the Gelman plume since the court documents were opened, and we did spend 3 full meetings on drafting a resolution that I was very happy with. I think we did a very good job in integrating information and coming up with proposals for suggestions for solving this. And things have been proceeding after many, many years. Remembering that this plume was first discovered in 1984. Jeez. That's a long time. And especially in a community like this, for something like this to have been left to its own devices. So I'd like to open the floor just briefly for a discussion about what people think might, what kind of policies and procedures we might think of implementing to improve our efficiency and our work product and our output. So please raise your hand if you'd like to mention anything. Kathy, are you raising your hand? Okay.
Sorry, I was just getting a hair out of my eyes, but I am paying attention. I did not want to be distracted.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Okay. So I would just hope that we can improve, our efficiencies and try to develop more things. We have things on the table either we're going to discuss next in terms of these broad areas that are part of our, remit from our bylaws, but also ongoing projects that we have. And I apologize if I've dropped anything, but I do think we've made significant progress in the last year. So I see some hands up now. First is John Mursky and then Rita. You have the floor, John.
Thanks, Steve. I concur with your general comments. I particularly support the statement that we really add value, not so much with resolutions of support. I mean, that's nice. But I think we really add value when we work on something that eventually leads to a change in policy or programs or something like that. And my sense is we do that best when working groups are focused on an issue like that, and there is a core group and it meets regularly and it's really focused on that task. And my belief is, and my experience is, not only on the Environmental Commission, but also on the Energy Commission, that leads to the best outcomes the most quickly. And that's evidenced by a number of different things that we've done. I mean, we're going to probably talk later about zero waste. It's true of the lighting ordinance. It's true of the EV charging ordinance. It's true of some of the energy benchmarking and disclosure ordinances that are going to be coming to council here soon. And my sense is that we would be best served going forward. And Steve and I, just for transparency for everybody else, Steve and I met yesterday and again today and just chatted a little bit. My sense is that we would be best served as a commission if we really want to have work that leads to tangible outcomes and benefits to the city, that we organize around that principle, and that we not juggle a bunch of other issues and talk about a lot of different things, but really focus on specific tasks, like I said, that focus on policy and programs. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thanks. While everybody's quiet, I think there is value in resolutions because they obviously do support changes in kinds of policies and programs, but those are most just really advocacy. They're really not adding a whole lot of value, in my view.
Sorry, I was muted. Rita, you have the floor, and then Lisa, and then Kathy.
Well, I just want to make a kind of a suggestion that applies to myself as well, that as we get into our working groups, that it's a good idea to set some timeframes, some target timeframes to complete a task. And even if it's not done, it's better to at least have a goal of a time and then to address what may be a problem. So as I said, I am speaking to myself on, for example, something we'll talk about later, the Chapter 40 kind of thing, and some other tasks. But I think that's what would be something that I would like us to see, have an expectation of ourselves to complete work.
Yeah, Lisa, you have the floor.
Yeah, I wanted to just add a couple things. First, I wanted to say that John Callawart and I and Jenny Petoskey turned in with the support of OSI a next cycle grant to research metrics for the circular economy. And if that grant is successful, there's a second round of funding for more money for a kind of boot camp for how to actually build the circular economy, which would be great. Or I don't know, build isn't really quite the right word, but in any case. So we are doing those things. And then the white paper that I just sent you all, I'm sorry, I did not, I was in the car today and, just didn't, I didn't see your email, Steve. So I didn't realize that you were depending on me to circulate it. So that white paper is the basis for a resolution. And the Zero Waste Working Group has been working on that for a really long time. And it takes a long time to get the language right. And I think one of the keys for the work that we're doing in the Zero Waste Working Group is that we're working really closely with staff so that we're making sure that the stuff that we come up with aligns with priorities that staff really has and isn't taking us off or isn't trying to steer staff off in directions that they don't have time or capacity for. And so, I think things like the construction and demolition ordinance are a great example of exactly the kinds of things we should be working on, because that is a priority of the solid waste resource management plan. And it's something that I don't think staff has time to fully develop, but developed with their close collaboration and guidance. I think that kind of that's pretty productive. And so so I think that's all I can think of for accomplishments that I know of from that group so far.
Well, thanks, Lisa. Kathy, you have the floor.
Yeah, based on what you said, as well as John Mursky, I think much of the work of the commission is perceived to be bringing about change, bringing about improvement in the organization. And I definitely support that. But we need to make sure that we have a strong foundation so that staff doesn't have to choose between working on a new project and maintaining the existing operation. And I think that's one of the reasons that the ordinance change to Chapter 40 has been so difficult, is because we really want to change the perception. I was looking through some old A2 Fix-It tickets, and a former council member who created a beautiful prairie area in his backyard that backs up to Green Road. There were numerous tickets complaining about his backyard and how it hadn't been mowed. And so how do we implement change and improvement in a smoother manner? And I don't have all the answers, but I definitely think that the focus needs to be on education, not enforcement whenever possible. And again, how can we strengthen the present? You probably remember I modified the A20 plan to include the phrase, develop strategies to manage flooding. And since the last meeting, we have had terrible destructive flooding in many areas, and I've been standing out in people's backyards with my muck boots on. And we really don't have the capacity within the organization to manage what's happening right now with the increase in rainfall this year, let alone moving forward. And so I think that if it's not a matter of the commission passing resolutions, it's some recognition that we need to assist the organization to build a strong foundation now. And as a commissioner, I don't even know what that would be. As a council member, I know that we can pass policies and approve budgets for additional work, but it seems like there needs to be greater awareness within the commissions of that. So, and the last thing that I think has been really positive with my experience on the Environmental Commission is just the opportunity to work with commissioners on other commissions as well as other governmental entities. It's been educational, and I think that we've accomplished a significant amount, such as Gelman, such as flooding, where we need to strengthen our relationship with the county, working with Evan Pratt, working with Eagle representatives. And I don't know that we need to formalize it, but I think that we need to at least recognize that that's a positive. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Yeah, I think this is worth an extended discussion about staff time, because I agree with John that it's very important to get staff involved as early as possible. And however, we don't want to make too many demands on their time. And I'm just using this as an example. I know that it was in our last meeting a month ago, the Orchard Hills community. We discussed briefly about the flooding in Orchard Hills, and about that there was never actually a flood management plan done for Orchard Hills, and that Jen Lawson was working on it. But so this would seem to be something that we should be developing a work group around, but we need a commissioner. We only need one commissioner to try to lead such a work group, and maybe work with Jen Lawson and try to initiate something more strategic and direct in terms of stormwater management. Galen and I, before the meeting, were just discussing that OSI is going to have an ambassador program that will include like flooding and things like that as part of the resiliency strategy in terms of the 820 plan. So I'm hoping that during the next year we'll find a commissioner that will step up and try to organize a work group around that. And work with Jen Lawson, and perhaps Jerry Hancock has been the other staff person that I'm familiar with that's spoken to us about, about flooding issues. So I'm hoping this is something that we can develop, but we need to have a commissioner that will step up and volunteer for that. And I will remind people that we are still missing 2 commissioners, plus a representative from the Parks Commission. So I'm hoping to recruit somebody who would be interested in more in stormwater and water quality issues to help the commission, with those topics. Shannon, you have the floor.
I can unmute myself. I think I'm in a really good position to be able to do that in terms of my background. I've had kind of a rough year in terms of other stuff going on in my life with how much time I have. But I feel like I'm in a good position just with my work professionally and things like that to be able to help with that. When we worked with other water things before, it is tough to be able to get the staff time sometimes that you need for this, because some of this really may be in terms of understanding where those pinch points are and things like that. There just need to be some like studies done and things like that. It's like, that's tough, right? To be able to like run models or whatever. But I think that, it is definitely an issue, and it's only going to get worse. And there are limited things we can do. I mean, it's like just as an example, Allen Creek system in the pipes was only sized to be a 1.5-year storm. We get that, many times a year. And so there are certain things we can do, and there are other things we can't do. But I think I probably have a decent idea of kind of where some of those issues are too, and have some sense of a way to move through that system. So I feel like I could probably work on that. I just need to be careful about just some things in my personal life in terms of the amount of time that I could spend on it right now. But I would like to be involved in that, and I feel like I could contribute to that. So.
Okay, well, thanks, Shannon. I'll just say that Bob, Bob has been interested as well. And so I think he would assist you. And I have to emphasize that also, I think everybody who's leading a working group should feel like they should be able to delegate almost all the tasks to somebody else, especially in a pinch. So I'm just throwing that out there. So Kathy, you have the floor. And then John.
I would be interested in being a member of that work group. And I just want to state how exceptional the employees are in that area. But also, I believe that they're working well beyond their capacity right now. And so we need to recognize that the only reason things are going as well as they are is because of the extra effort of these exceptional employees.
Yeah, agreed.
Thanks, Kathy. John?
I may be a broken record to some who've heard me speak on this issue before, but I think we need to think about our work the same way that business thinks about their work, in terms of businesses get paid by their customers for delivering positive outcomes to their customers. And our customers are our residents. And we should think about our efforts not in terms of work done or intentions or hours spent or something else, but what do we do that leads to, for example, a reduced number of flooding events in Orchard Hills and or a reduction in the impact. All the work we might do in terms of hours spent or talk or anything else is really not doing anything for the residents of Orchard Hills unless we reduce the number of flooding events and or we reduce their severity. And I think that thinking is not sufficiently strong in city government and the work that I see being done. And I think, I mentioned, the EV charging ordinance. I mean, that will lead to specific tangible benefit outcomes in terms of the number of EV chargers that are going to be available to residents and visitors in Ann Arbor. I mean, there's a clear benefit. And I think to get to those kinds of benefits, we need a very specific and clear issue or task with a clear objective. We need a clear leader. We need people that are willing to work with that leader and meet on a regular basis. I mean, I'm going to speak here. I may be a little bit out of line because Chris is not here. But thinking about natural features, we've done a lot of work. But one of the reasons why we haven't reached an outcome is because we haven't been meeting on a regular basis and really pounding out the work done. And so you need also a drumbeat of meetings. And, as you mentioned, as somebody else mentioned, we need a commitment. I mean, there's a lot of research that's been done in various settings that if a group gets together and says, I commit to doing X by Y, versus just saying, I commit to doing X, but I promise that I will do X by Y. The likelihood that X will be done by Y is substantially higher, like double, than just by a vague commitment saying, we're going to do X. And X is not very well defined, and Y, the date is not even mentioned. And so I would ask that we as a group think about all of those things as being requirements for tasks that we take on, that we have really something in mind that's going to lead to a direct benefit to our residents, that we have a clear issue and objective, that we have a clear leader with people that are willing to work with that leader on a drumbeat, and that we have a clear deliverable. We are going to do X by Y. And otherwise, I really think we're wasting our time. Not wasting our time, but we're not being efficient and effective. And I think we all want to be efficient and effective. Thanks for indulging me.
Well, thanks, John. Are there any more comments? I mean, I'll just, I mean, I agree with John on this point. I think it's important, but I think this is where just some basic things work. I mean, regular monthly meetings, and I'm probably one of the worst with the construction and demolition ordinance. I'm one of the worst here because I confess that I have not gotten much done over the last 6 months due to various reasons. But I intend to reform, and we'll have a meeting in September and get rolling. But I think it's we also have to remember that it's important in the beginning to spend some effort before we get to the stage where John's talking about, where we actually define the problem appropriately, and we brainstormed what the possible causes are, and that we have kind of a SWOT analysis done, you know, strengths, weaknesses, and opportunity and threats of the various approaches for mediating it, and then developing SMART goals out of those with action points and regular monthly meetings. I mean, that's, in my experience in business as well, that's how things get done in an efficient manner, and everybody feels good in the end because we have a tangible product to show for our work, for our time commitment. So, so I'll get off my soapbox here too. And does anybody else wish to make a comment? No, I don't see anybody talk. So I think I want to thank Shannon for stepping up here, and we'll support you as much as we can. And please, again, I feel like I think because we all have day jobs and other things on our plates, I think it's also important to have a co-leader. I think it's rather difficult if one person is trying to pull all the strings, and that there needs to be somebody who is following everything at the level that the leader is doing, so that they can step in at fairly short notice and help out. So Kathy, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
Then I suggest that we find a new member who can fill that opening. You know, as you sort of alluded to, someone who has water expertise. And I'll take the action item to try to find someone, and maybe Rita and I can look at the applicants that are out there right now. But I mean, unless anyone's opposed to that, I think that we need a member that has leadership ability and will meet all of John's requirements for quantitative work. Need I say more?
Okay. All right. Thanks, Kathy. Lisa, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think maybe we need to refresh the applicant pool.
Yeah, I think so.
I think our recruitment efforts kind of hit a dead end, not because we didn't read them through and recruit, but that many people weren't really interested. Like the pool seemed to have a lot of, I don't know, algae floating in it rather than fish. And so we probably want to recruit again. And you are not algae, Chris.
Far from it. Yeah. No, I agree. I think it would be good for all of us to, you know, recruit for our networks as well, and encourage people that we think are appropriate to apply for the commission. And part of this for me was also raising the visibility of the commission in the community, and that's why I wanted to have a table at the Green Fair on October 1st. And I'm really happy that 3 of us have stepped up to help with that. So I'm talking to Missy about tabling and maybe having a cloth, you know, for the commission, and we'll see how that goes. And we'll have some materials to present on October 1st. So yeah, so let's try to encourage people to apply, and then give it a month, and then look over the applicant pool, or maybe just a few weeks. So this could be an action point for the meeting, is that people will encourage applicants to apply, specifically that are interested in stormwater management and water quality. I'm not sure they need to be members of the Ann Arbor community. I mean, Jen Lawson has alluded to the fact that a lot of some of this is in the, in the purview of the county drain commissioner. So let's have if some of you want to reach out to Jen Lawson and ask for her advice about what kind of expertise we'd like to have on the commission to help her deal with these issues, as well as maybe Jerry Hudson. So John, you have your hand up, and then Lisa.
It might be worth reaching out to the Huron River Watershed Council. Those people are connected with a lot of people who are interested in these kinds of issues, water quality, et cetera. They have a lot of volunteers, and I think some of us have contacts there, so I would recommend that we think about that. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Lisa?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I would be happy to table in the morning of October 1st. I have to leave town for the afternoon, but I'd be happy to be at the Green Fair. So.
Oh, thanks, Lisa. I don't think it starts till 5 or so. I haven't seen it exactly, but we'll see, okay? But thank you for volunteering. I'm Chris, and Chris Vandenbroek has volunteered, as well as Lunia, and Young Wen, I believe, has volunteered to help out with that as well. So, I'll put you on the list here. So tell you what, I don't know who else has contacts on the Huron River Watershed Council, but I have dealt with a lot of the people there over PFAS issues and other such things. So I can take that on personally, as I will try to get their advice, their input on this over the next week. Okay. So here's a SMART goal. Yeah, by this time next Friday, I will have I will get a couple of people applying to be a commissioner that are qualified. That the Huron River Watershed Council has recommended. John, you have your hand up.
The Green Fair runs from 6 to 9 p.m.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The setup will start at 5, I think. So that's at 5 to 9 on Friday, October 1st. And I think it's going to be on Main Street, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen the location from Christine Chopri. My communications have been with Christine.
It will be on Main Street.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm hoping showing up at this event, tabling along with other organizations, will help raise our profile and possibly lead to some more applicants and larger applicant pool. All right. So I think that's a good discussion about water quality, because I do think that that's been an area that's been chronically underserved by the commission. And so I think it'd be important to try to recruit somebody, develop a working group, and try to get a tangible work product next year. Kathy, you have your hand up.
Council will be having a working session September 13th on the decision of whether we want to go forward with upgrading our existing water treatment facility, which is staff's recommendation, or explore connecting to the Great Lakes Water Authority. And so anyone who's interested can look at the 2 attachments that are out on Legistar right now.
What day is that, Kathy?
September 13th.
Okay. Yeah, that would be a significant step, a significant change in our ability to manage our own, well, it has a lot of ramifications. Kathy, did you have
Oh.
something to say?
No, I apologize.
Knock it down. Thanks. Rita, you have the floor.
I just want to be sure that we get the document references from you, Kathy, that you just alluded to on the Great Lakes water, on the water session.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think they're probably on Legistar, right, Kathy?
They're on Legistar as support documents for the meeting on September 13th. So they're easy to find and they're connected to the, I think, to the agenda.
Okay. Yeah. All righty. Thanks. So, so let's see. What's the next topic people would like to discuss? Let's see. Okay. Well, I will. Let's move on to natural features and pollinators, and then solid waste. So, the zero waste working group has done a tremendous job lately. And so, Lisa, do you want to mention what the work group has been doing and where you are?
Yeah, John, do you want to start and talk about our work with Jenny, and then I'll talk about the zero waste working paper, unless John Mirsky, you want to talk about that working paper because you put a lot of energy into that as well.
Go ahead, John.
Sure. Just a little bit more to add to what Lisa shared earlier in the meeting, but we've submitted a grant proposal to Next Cycle to fund an intern to get us started with a circular economy metrics initiative. We've also posted the internship opportunity through the city. So that's all in the works. We're hopefully here in a couple of weeks about the funding, and simultaneously we're getting ready to submit the next stage of grant funding to kind of continue the work through another funding opportunity. The first one was a micros grant, and the second one will be I2P3. Can't remember what the acronym stands for, but it all relates to what we're trying to do around the circular economy initiative. So the first phase will be to work with an intern to help to define metrics and review literature and help kind of get us set and grounded. The next phase will be a project with a group of C's master's students, and we've already reached out and got commitments from 2 faculty members, probably one firm, one a backup, to kind of get us moving ahead. And both are very excited and think there's a strong fit with what the students will be interested in. That work won't start for a while yet, but you can see we're kind of building things in stages. We've also had a great meeting last month or earlier this month with Washtenaw Community College about kind of a boot camp for small businesses to get them connected to the work and thinking about what we're doing. So lots of things going on. So Jenny, Lisa, and I meet regularly. We've got a Trello board where we're trying to keep everything managed and moving along. And it's just been really good. Good progress, good partnerships. I think we've got folks lined up from the university, the city, the county, nonprofits that are involved in this. So lots of good energy around the circular economy initiative.
Yeah, that's fabulous, John. You know, it's been, I mean, the city had some goals and metrics back in 2008. And so, you know, it's wonderful to see this being revived in such a strong way. And I can use your all's advice about moving forward with the construction and demolition. My construction and demolition ordinance as well, moving forward, because you guys have done this really efficiently and effectively. So I would like to see this say something similar with the construction and demolition efforts. Maybe I could segue into that because I've gathered, you know, what I've done is I've gathered a lot of information. I've got a core group of people. I'm sorry, John, are you finished?
I was just going to say, I thought John Mirsky, did you want to pick up with the, no? Okay, well.
Okay.
Okay, well then I'll
Maybe
quickly,
Lisa, you can, and then
sure,
Steve and I'll chime in.
yeah, I'll do that. Okay, so the secret to our success with this other thing is that John, besides being incredibly smart, has remarkable organizational abilities, and this Trello site is amazing. And then Jenny is a taskmaster. Talk about steady drumbeat of meetings. She's like, okay, when are we meeting next? So that is one way of doing it. And so then the other thing that the Zero Waste Working Group is working on has finished now, that a draft that it's happy with, but for your review, of a white paper on zero waste, proposing a definition of zero waste, which we went back and forth and haggled on a lot. The objective of the white paper is to make the argument that it is important for the city to reaffirm its zero waste. I guess it did have a zero waste goal, or I don't know. Zero waste was a commitment in a couple of other waste planning documents, but it fell out of the SHWRP. And so we're saying you need to reaffirm this principle. You need to define it, because without defining it, that's silly. And then there need to be a firm set of target goals, because you don't say, so we're going to hit zero waste and it'll be in 5 years. Great, we're done. It needs to be a gradual rollout. And so we propose a couple of different timelines, which you'll see in the white paper. And then we proposed in the white paper a number of strategies for reaching them. And so I think I got myself distracted. So the point of the white paper is to argue that the city needs to reaffirm this principle, define it, and then align the SHWRP and the A20 plan. And the idea is that a zero waste goal is part of aligning the SHWRP and the A20 plan. And since it was left out of the SHWRP, we need to get council to reaffirm it to actually bring those two things together. And then it really is a permission for us and for solid waste, the solid waste area, to work on strategy 5 of A20. And of course, it will be easier to do all this kind of work when there is more funding. But in the meantime, that's why we're working on these grants, because at least we can get some outside funding and we can show the city that it actually makes a big difference to its carbon footprint. And also we can show them that there's a lot of energy in the community for doing this zero waste work. And when you connect the people who are doing that, and when you recruit people whose primary business isn't zero waste, but for example, like the restaurants with those returnable containers, that a piece of their business can participate in the circular economy. That's how you create the circular economy, is you build these connections and you create the policy bridge, and also, the social media software and other kinds of things that enable people to find these services. And so that's what we're working on. And I think it's really exciting to bridge these two plans. And so I'm sorry that I didn't disseminate the working paper in time, but I look forward to either, probably talking about it in September makes more sense.
Lisa, you want to talk briefly about the resolution too?
Well, yeah, right. And so the intent is that the white paper supports a resolution, which I wrote one draft of, but I've never written a resolution before. So I sent it to John Mursky and Jenny, and of course, staff is going to have to work on this resolution, but I wanted to draft something for them first. And I think in this case, a resolution is really the appropriate thing, because it's not, there is an ordinance that I would like to have, and that is an ordinance paralleling the EV charging for compost, because right now we're not creating the infrastructure for composting. And I think that's problematic, and Shannon had raised that at a planning commission meeting. But I think at this moment, what we're trying to get the city to do is integrate this work and make it a priority for the city, and make the circular economy a lens through which other things are considered, just as we often invoke our carbon neutrality goals as a lens through which other things that we are allocating or building or approving are considered. And so that's what we're trying to do, is just push this up into, and so that we're not only focused on end-of-life strategies of recycling and even composting, although those are both very good, but that we also need to be taking advantage of, all the work that our our residents are doing to not buy stuff and to give away their things that could be useful to someone else, even if they aren't useful to them anymore. So.
Okay. No, thank you, Lisa. Anybody else wish to make a comment on this topic? Okay, I'm just going to add briefly that the local Sierra Club, Huron Valley Group, is sponsoring a trash talk tour. It's going to be September 19th. There's going to be a website coming online soon. There are 14 stops on this tour. They include, the drop-off center, the We Care facility for composting, the old landfill down there. They also include several businesses such as By the Pound, the PTO Thrift Shop. There's a new company I wasn't even aware of called Bring Your Own Container, that's offering for sale containers that are reusable for takeout and other things. So that's going to be a stop on the tour, as well as Zingerman's, Black Pearl, and Blue Mama. And then we're going to end at Common Cycle, and I'm leading the bicycle tour. So if anybody wants to join me on a bike, I hope the weather's going to be good. But we're planning a bike tour, but it's otherwise it's going to be self-directed. There'll be a website with some videos, I think, and anybody in the community can do this tour. And so this is designed for community education and try to make people more aware of how solid waste is handled in the city currently and what we could be doing better. So I just want to mention this in this forum. And the one thing, I'm going to schedule a meeting for the C&D group. I do have a core group. I don't know who else might want to join. John Mursky has volunteered. I've kind of been slow at selecting other volunteers until I have other people in place. Jenny Petoskey's been working with me, and I agree she is a taskmaster about doing the proper procedure. I've become a little bit more familiar with the city's way of doing these things. But I do need some help more specifically. I'll be done in a second here. I do need some help specifically because it's clear now that to make this economical and to achieve the kinds of economies of scale that are required, there are a couple of basic things. The first thing is that we do need to have a dedicated construction and demolition MRF. This cannot be done within the current MRF. However, the current RAA site, the old Calvert facility on Jackson Road, is ideally placed for it. And there already is some construction and demolition recycling occurring there, principally through the University of Michigan's LEED building campaigns and projects. And Theo Egremont, who's the county's solid waste person, is part of this core group. But to get the economies of scale, this needs to be countywide. This needs to be organized on a countywide basis, or at least coordinated with the county, not just the city. So I would appreciate some people who might feel more politically adept than I am and more familiar with the political landscape to maybe step up and help out with that part of the project. So, and getting some coordination between county and city. So this wouldn't be like a permanent person in the core group, but just somebody who could field questions that come up occasionally while we're working with each other, because it's not clear to me how to do such a thing. I know WIRMA was a process where the staff worked with county staff on that, and that was a long process, though. That took some 3 or 4 years. That's from my recollection. So, John, you have your hand up.
To your points, and then going back to what Lisa and John talked about, Steve, remember that Doug Selby is willing to at least join the group part-time, representing home building contractors. And I've met Joe Vig, who's head of Vig Construction, that does a lot of large construction projects for the University of Michigan. And I'm happy to approach him to see if he might have a recommendation of someone perhaps in his firm or someone else that would be willing to join this effort. Because as we've recognized in some of the preliminary discussions that we've had, this won't work if we impose something on contractors that they're not involved in formulating. As to what John and Lisa talked about, I just want to reinforce what I said earlier. We had in both cases a clear task. We had clear leaders. We should give credit to Sam McMullen, who did a lot of work on this zero waste framing. I mean, he really was the leader and established the drumbeat and made sure we met and kept us focused and on task. And we had a really clear objective. And as I said before, if you have those kinds of things, you're much, much more likely to be successful. And this is just two more examples of that. The one thing that we never did for ourselves, which ended up not being an impediment, but still is, as we discussed, a best practice, is we never set ourselves a due date. But we had really committed people, and we met regularly under clear leadership and focused on a task. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, Doug Selby is a member of this core group. And, also Jan Culbertson, since she's an architect and she's involved in Project 2030. So I've got a number of people covering construction. I've reached out to the associations, but I've not gotten any commitment from them as yet. So Rita, you have your hand up, and then Kathy. Rita,
Sorry. This is a solid waste question, and it's not, it goes back more to residents and education. And is there someone who's addressing the process of providing good guidance to the community in terms of our recycling efforts, in understanding what exactly can be recycled and to keep our recycling stream clean as possible? And I'll just relate one tiny anecdote that happened with me today as I went with a friend to the drop-off station. We spent maybe 10 or 15, not 10, up to 10 minutes talking with the person at the gate, asking questions about what we could drop off for sure. Plastic bags, yes. Styrofoam, yes. Hard plastic of certain types, no. Lids of plastic containers, yes. And so this is just a suggestion. I don't know who does it. Maybe it's me. To create some displays of actual physical objects and say, this is something that can go, and this is something that cannot go into the stream. So that's, I don't know who takes it, but I feel like having the actual physical object available to view will help people in their decisions on putting the right things in the actual recycling.
Okay, thanks. Kathy, you have your hand up, then John, and then Chris.
I was going to volunteer to handle political questions, if that's exactly how you're framing it. Anyway, I'm volunteering to help.
Oh, great. Thanks, Kathy. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. John, you have the floor.
To Rita's question, by far the best resource is Recycle Ann Arbor's A to Z recycling guide. Well, it is the best resource that we have. And it also has the ability to provide comments so that if you're not happy with the information that it provides, that you can suggest improvements. And they're not always acted on immediately, but they generally are acted on. And I would suggest that if somebody has a better idea, please step forward. But my belief is that is by far the best resource. The second best resource, which is not available widely, is simply having the right tags or labels or whatever you want to call them on the recycling cards. We have them on our recycling carts, at least on some. They're not on compost carts, except for the couple of routes that were tagged during the more carts, more compost, I think is what it was called, initiative. But that was just on a couple of routes in Route Ward 1. But those are the two best things. And if you go to the A to Z recycling guide, it is structured such that it can, if properly filled out, can provide the kind of information that I think you're looking for, Rita. It's structured that way.
I have used it and I didn't feel like it answered my questions, but I'll look at it again, definitely.
Yeah, and go to the bottom, and then there is a suggestion form where you can say, this is not providing the information that I need, or it's providing it in a way that's confusing. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Chris, you have the floor.
So this is a subject that's very dear to my heart. The A to Z guide. I mean, I agree with everything John Mirsky just said. However, the A to Z guide drives me crazy. If you go to plastic bags, for instance, there's 13 different kinds of plastic bags, and I can't sort them out. I'm working with Brian Weiner, and who is responsible at Recycle Ann Arbor for trying to find markets for all this stuff. So part of the problem is what's recyclable is what he can sell to somebody who wants it. And another part of the problem is that we don't know what the new MRF can sort yet. So, for example, Jennifer Petoskey has a sorting game, and she worked with Dan Ezekiel to make a little video. And I sat next to her at a table at the farmer's market recently. And I know you did too, Lisa. And so in this little game, she states that, well, anything smaller than a fist can't be, recycled because it's too small for the MRF. Well, we don't really know, but that's the song that Jennifer is singing right now. I'll give you a good technical example. So if you look at the little triangle on the recycling and the plastics that you've got little numbers. Number 1 is PET, and it's recyclable, but it's really recyclable if it's in the form of a bottle. There's a slightly different formulation if it's in the form of a tub that you might buy lettuce in at a grocery store. Mm-hmm. And if the percentage of tubs gets too large in the mix of bottles, then the purchaser doesn't have as much interest in it. So Brian is walking a fine line, and Jennifer is saying, for now, let's throw out those big tubs, which just drives me nuts because they're so nice and clean. When I dump the lettuce out, why can't I recycle that? So I think part of the message is it's an evolving workscape. We have to just kind of wait and be a little bit patient. And I'm working with Brian Weiner to improve the R to Z guide, maybe with some general things in front of it, like, hey, if it's real small, throw it out. It doesn't say that anywhere in the guide right now. And so on and so on and so on. So this really has to be, I just really, really am eager to fix this. So if you got more questions, throw them at me, and Brian Weiner and I will work it out as we go on. Thanks.
Yeah, I think some of the things I'm most hopeful for in this realm are the extended producer responsibility bills. There was one, the state of Maine and the state of Oregon have just passed, and the governor signed bills demanding extended producer responsibility. And if you look at Waste Dive occasionally, this weekly newsletter, or daily newsletter, Waste Dive, there are many initiatives to try to simplify plastic packaging to make it more recyclable. So there is movement out there at the national level to help resolve this issue, because it's just a nightmare.
Right.
So, Yang Wen, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the A to Z guide and information about recycling and composting. I think that to promote diversity, we should at least provide language assistance to people who don't speak English, or include information that's really important in different languages. And if translating all information is really a big task, we should at least include a message at the bottom of whatever message we are sending out that says we offer language assistance, because promoting diversity in sustainability is really important, and I think we should do that.
Okay. No, that's a great point, Yang Wen. Tell you what, I'll try to connect you with Brian Weiner, and you can discuss that with him. Okay? He's on the board of directors of Recycle Ann Arbor, and he's very passionate about recycling, and I think he'd probably be the best person to address your concerns and try to propose a solution. Think about solutions. Anybody else wish to make a comment on this topic? I mean, I participated in this More Compost, More Carts campaign, and I think it was very successful. And it's been difficult to get the city to try to, okay, that was done in one of the 45 routes that the city has. One out of the 45 routes. It was done through a Sustaining Ann Arbor Together grant. There was a $10,000 grant, and it was managed by the ICPJ. And so, and I thought it was very successful. And these stickers were, it involved, just to let everybody know, is it involved every Thursday morning for the month of May, we went around to the carts that were out on the street, because you have to do it when they're on the street. And we put notices there first saying this was going to happen. And then the second one was another set of notices. And then the third and the fourth weeks, we slapped the stickers on the carts. And we had stickers for, for the waste carts and for the compost carts and for the recycling carts. And so it's a very easy thing to do. So far, the city has only had the time and the resources to put it on new carts. So they have pledged that whenever new carts are requested by residents, that they'll have those stickers on them. But this is a complicated topic, because as I've participated in Jenny's sorting game as well, which is a big hit with children, especially, and it depends on what community you're in, because what's recyclable depends on the MRF and who and what kind of contracts they have in place. So this is one of the situations that is really going to come under the purview of WRMA, for regionalization. If we're going to regionalize waste processing, then we have to make the messaging consistent. So so let's see. That's all I have to say. I think, and I've been trying for years to try to get a group of volunteers together to go and do these carts and to do a similar thing through other routes in the city, but I haven't gotten any traction on that so far. So John, you have your hand up.
To use your last example and build on comments from Rita and Chris, this recycling thing is so freaking complicated. It's a disaster. I mean, if you are in Ann Arbor and you're on City of Ann Arbor property, you can recycle glass. If you cross over and go into University of Michigan building, you cannot recycle glass. And if you go into a township that, for example, you're in the Ann Arbor public school system and your kids go in the Ann Arbor public school system and maybe they're taught one thing, but the township has a different MRF, what can be recycled there is different. It is just so damn complicated. We make it, yeah. What more can I say? Chris, you know this better than probably the rest of us, but it is a disaster. We're lucky that we have I forget what exactly the rate is called, but about 10% of our recyclables are rejected, 10 to 11%. That's relatively clean compared to lots of municipalities. That's also include dirty recyclables as well as things that aren't recyclable. We're actually pretty good at that rate. But, for those of you who are reading about what was going on with China, and I forget they called their program to improve their acceptance of recyclables. They were shooting, I think, for cleanliness levels of below 0.5%. So, if we had been shipping our stuff to China directly for recycling, it all would have been shipped back on a boat. I mean, that's how far we are from being able to to do this well. And it's just, and it's, you know, industry and the point that Steve made earlier about responsibility, it's just made extremely difficult for consumers to be able to understand what can and can't be done. And I work in this all the time, and I'm completely perplexed a good portion of the time as to what I myself can do.
Amen. So Chris, would you want to talk about this topic a little bit, or do you have anything to add?
Well, I just agree with everything John's saying. I like to ditto it. It's extremely complex. And I see my task as, in an outreach sense, it's got to be made simple enough for my neighbor. My neighbor is happy to throw stuff in the recycling bin, but he really doesn't care what number is on the plastic. I mean, I take the time to read it because I'm kind of a nerd. And I say, well, this is number 7, so we can't do that, blah, 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 blah. But I'm 1 out of 100. So again, I'm just agreeing with what John is saying. And so I see now Rita is interested. She wants to know what can be recycled, what can't. Well, most people don't care. They just throw it somewhere. So it is very remarkable, really. And I think you're correct, John, that our rejection rate for recycled stuff is about 10%. And overall, in the residential stream, we recycle, or we prevent, let's say, put this way, we divert from the landfill about 50% of residential trash into the recycling stream, which is really good. We can get better, and there are various outreach programs for that, and I want to participate in them. But so I'm just preaching to the choir here again. I'll shut up.
I think I may have shared with you, I lived with my daughter for 2 weeks, and that was extremely enlightening to see how the average person, even my own daughter, you know, what their attitudes about recycling are. And, you know, it's, Chris, you've taken on a huge task. I'm happy to help as best I can, but.
Well, I'll work with Brian and Yongwin and whoever. Really, it's really important. So we'll do what we can.
Oh.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, I've always relied on pre-cycling myself, you know, but you can't even buy spinach anymore with a rubber band around it. You know, it has to come triple washed in a plastic box. So I grow my own as much as I can, but you just can't. You know, everybody's gone to this convenience thing of everything's sterilized and in a plastic box. So, but I do know that there's some action on the national level about this. There's a plastic pollution bill that's in Congress, and there's also a plastic bottle mandate that's on the for recycling. You know, expanding the plastic recycling to, or actually expanding bottle bills nationally. A bottle bill for plastics that extends to all plastic containers, even juices and water. But who knows what the prospects of that getting passed in Congress are. And even if it does, it'll probably be at least 5 years before the deadline comes for industry. So Chris, you have your hand up.
Well, I don't want to take up too much time in this meeting for this subject because we could spend a whole meeting on it. But just add in that on the Trash Talk tour that you mentioned, Steve, I think one of the stops is on Liberty where they advertise a refill station. So you don't have to buy a new bottle of shampoo every time your bottle runs out. You can take the old bottle of shampoo and go get it refilled, which we ought to be aware of. And Dan Ezekiel's Trash Talk tour is an effort, one of the outreach efforts to get everybody in the city. You know, if you get 1,000 people, we'll be real happy to be aware of this kind of thing, because not only does that help the recycling, but it is a part of the path towards the zero waste or the circular economy that we're all talking about. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah,
I'll be quiet.
Yeah, maybe I know the 820 program, the Sustainability Ambassadors program that Galen runs. I know they have some ambassadors that are working on solid waste issues. So do you want to mention anything that's going on, Galen, right now in that field, on that topic?
We'll be kicking off our second cohort of sustainability ambassadors. That's going to be happening on September 15th. We currently have a cohort of about 20 residents right now who are ready to participate and take the journey with us.
Okay. And I heard that some of them were working on a project with multifamily housing. Is that correct, for composting and maybe recycling?
Well, there's a couple of groups. I think that the composting group or the group that was working with Jenny slowed down a little bit due to the COVID. You know, so and that was Ray and his wife and some others. So hopefully we can get that picked up, or the second group will pick up where they left off at, you know, or hopefully they can combine their efforts.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Galen. Rita, you have your hand up. You're muted.
Okay, sorry. This is just a question for all of us. In terms of thinking about what we're working on and the A20 program and targeting, thinking about our actions in terms of what it can do to reduce the carbon output, which is what we really all want to do. So it's, I don't have a solid thing to say about it right now, but it seems to me that we should kind of target and prioritize those things that address the most impact that we can have on that plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Rita. All right, so shall we, I think we've exhausted this topic, unless anybody has anything more to say. So let's move on to another one. How about, yeah, Chris is not here for natural features, so I don't know if anybody wants to speak on his behalf, but we can move on to pollinators. If Rita, you want to talk about what the pollinators work group is doing and what you see your long-term goals as being. And
Steve, I can give a real quick update on natural features.
Oh yeah, okay, John. Yeah, what's new with natural features?
The group has been working on a number of different things, but I would say the most tangible desired outcome is a change to the UDC regarding the protection of trees through expansion of what's currently there to include both landmark and heritage trees with 2 separate lists, and also to enhance or add requirements regarding grading permits. And Chris and Wendy, Carmen and I have been meeting as Chris has been available, which hasn't been very frequent during the summer months. It gets back to what I talked about earlier, that really having a drumbeat is really, really important. But we're getting pretty close to having a product. Because we're not meeting on a regular schedule, I can't say that pretty close will get across the finish line with something to present to the commission in 6 weeks or in another 4 months. I just don't know. But a lot of work has been put into that. We've gone through language. Now we're going through it the 3rd time. So we're getting pretty close. And of course, there's other kinds of things like the SEAS project and things like that have been presented, I think, to the commission that the natural features working group has been working on. Rita, what did I miss?
Okay? You didn't miss, but I'm glad you brought up the SEAS project because it is pretty exciting. Those students have completed their field work, and they'll be they're cleaning their data set. So what they did was go out and identify some trees in specific areas and identify their sizes, their species, et cetera, get some basic information about them, combine with some databases that are available from the university, from FI, the Arb, and the city tree database, street tree database. And they'll be using machine training to identify kind of a flyover of the city to train the system to identify the trees in these areas, and then look at the whole city to see what we can find out about our remaining native forest fragments that will help the work that John and Chris are doing and Wendy are doing. It's really, really exciting. They also included some information, which I'm really happy about, which has to do with identifying even invasives. So they've figured out a method to deal with buckthorn thickets. Yeah, and I talked with them a little bit about Tree of Heaven, trying to get them to find some of those to see if we're having any kind of really serious invasion overall. Just that kind of thing. So ideally, what we'll have is a tool that we can use over and over in the city to look at what our tree canopy is, what the quality is of it, what the species are, and track it over time. That should be a really helpful tool to all of us. So it's great.
Okay. So Rita, does anybody else want to mention anything about natural features? Okay, let's move on to pollinators.
All right. Well, I'll just say that the pollinators group is sort of spinning its wheels right now. But I do want to thank Galen for the ambassadors, in particular when Bill Connett, who has joined our pollinator team as a really strong member, who's interested in working on improving the education features, which really means updating our website and getting some really good information available. Some of the things that we've talked about in the past have to do with building on work that's available already. So when the Environmental Commission passed a resolution, and then Council subsequently did as well, to encourage use of integrated pest management and reduce use of pesticides, there was really, in my mind, a need for an education component. And so what I'm hoping to do as we move forward, that we'll have information on plant types, resources in the community that of people and organizations that do the kind of plantings that support pollinators. That'll be the kind of thing that we'll build into this. We'll see. And we'll be working with city staff to get it updated. There's already a really good pollinator website on the NAP website, but we'd like to really push it a little bit farther. So I'm really happy to have this resource, and Bill, in addition, brought in a young entomologist who's going to help us with some guiding information as well. She has, this is really exciting. She has been working with the Smithsonian as a scholar and kind of a storyteller. And so I believe that we'll be able to develop some materials that convey information that will be useful to people. Something that John has commented on many, many times, and I agree, is developing outreach to the community to reduce turf grass. And I think what I will be focusing on for the next few months, and ideally I'll put some deadlines on it, is working on a plan to do something that Professor Doug Towney, one of the great entomologists, or one of my heroes, is to shrink the lawn. So I'd like to work with parks and our allied groups that we identified as we went through and did some outreach this spring with some of our pollinator groups to work with them on their ideas on how do we get a major step forward with shrinking the lawn. And so I hope to have something more solid to report to you on that in the future.
Thanks, Rita. Have you had any engagement with large landowners as yet?
You know, I did one small effort at a local church, and it turns out that my assessment of this was that it wasn't really in the mind of the person who was responsible for the property to do the kind of changes that I was going to suggest. And so it was like kind of a bad cold call in a way. So I want to kind of have some rethought thinking of that. And I certainly welcome any suggestions from anyone. And John has given me a number of them to follow through to make some progress in that way. Just to say to everyone else, what we'd like to do is to find some large landowners who have a lot of green grass and ask them to change it. I'd actually like to ask the schools. When I was during the lights out period this month, I was sitting at Pioneer High School and looking at their giant front green lawn that didn't have a weed that I could see. And I'd really like to change that, that would be a goal.
Excellent. Hey, John, you have the floor.
Just to carry on the conversation very briefly with Rita. Rita, consider reaching out to the 2030 district and Jan Culbertson.
Oh, okay.
It's a little bit far afield from what they're generally doing, but they are also forming a house of worship group that's going to focus on sustainability issues. And so, to get to the right people in the church that are interested in sustainability, as opposed to the guy who's just in charge of mowing the lawn, who may not really share the same values to the same degree, at least, would be potentially really, really powerful. So you must know Jan, right?
I know her name from reading it, but I have not met her and I haven't had a conversation. So if you can give me some contact, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll be happy to make a connection. Okay.
Yeah. I could see that as a great cascading kind of thing. If you establish it in the place of worship, that the worshipers may take it home.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm enthusiastic about schools myself too, because if you can get something like this on a school property, the kids are going to go home and talk to their parents about it.
Yeah, there are a lot of rain gardens and good native plantings at schools, but I was just looking at this giant lawn. That's what I was really kind of astounded by, and I just hadn't thought about it before. Certainly have passed it many times.
Kathy, you have your hand up, and then Shannon.
One of the issues with the Pioneer lawn is that it's used for football parking. And so if we could come up with something other than a lawn that could also serve as a parking lot, that would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Duly noted. Shannon, you have the floor.
Yeah, I actually was going to say something similar, and we helped design that because there's a huge stormwater facility underneath it, and it has to be able to support cars on top of it. It has all these layers of sand, a very special seed mix on top of it to be able to make it all work. So there are surprisingly few places at Pioneer, believe it or not, and they do have that great Pioneer Prairie. I think something that at the schools, definitely there are areas that they could do less mowing. I think some of the big rental companies that own lots of land, like McKinley or things like that, that just have big, huge lawn areas around the parking lots, and they make decisions for lots of areas in town. It's the thing they've just been doing forever. And so it's a big mental shift, and it's not going to happen with a cold call. Like, it just won't. And so there has to be kind of a cultural shift and desire for that, or pressure. But they, some of these big companies own lots of land with that. So I think that the schools are one, though, that at least the schools do recreation on their lawns. At least there's that. It also is a thing you have to take care of, and it's a different kind of expertise. And there's not a ton of it in terms of the capacity in Ann Arbor. The people that I know that do this are just booked solid for a long time. And so we need more people doing it in terms of the management, the professionalized management of it, which is really kind of what it comes down to. So even building that capacity, I think it would be an interesting thing to do, because there aren't enough people that know how.
So that could be a potential in the schools or WCC, no? Or other places?
Yeah, perhaps. And I would start in some ways with interviewing the people that do it, and where, how that happens.
Good idea.
And thinking about some of these larger landowners outside of the university and schools and things like that are kind of the obvious ones. But it's a whole different world of management, and it's hard for people to take on a different world when you already have something very operationalized. So,
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, Shannon, do you have an idea of what the relative costs are for like getting on a riding mower versus like selective reading, things like that?
Yeah, there's some good data on that out there that you can find. Again, it's a very intense first couple of years, and then you can start to back off, but it takes a very intense first couple of years. So you really have to kind of commit to it and want to do it and believe in it, because it looks like crap for a couple of years when this starts to look.
Oh, I know I've done that. Yeah, I've done that before on my private property, and it does require selective weeding for a number of years, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it would help when you're talking to people like that that are basically business people. I think it's good to have some rough idea at least of what the cost comparisons and things like that are.
And there's some good data out there, you know, for that, Rita, you know, that could be a pitch. So yeah, there definitely is good data out there for some of that, because people have saved money over time. If they're doing high inputs, if they're irrigating and doing fertilization and spraying and all that kind of thing and mowing, then if they're doing high inputs, then it is cheaper to go this other route. But if they're not, then it's not. So that's the thing that's tough.
Okay. So if you can direct me to that kind of data, that'd be great.
Yeah, let me make a note for myself.
That isn't something I've touched on yet. Okay.
Okay, yeah, and the term I like is ornamental turf grass. That's where it's not used for sports or anything else, because I think that captures it perfectly. Because we all don't think it's very ornamental. Anyway, so let's call it. So it has a bit of disparagement to it. So I call it ornamental turf grass. So okay, do you want anything else on the pollinators front?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think that almost wraps it up. And so, but there is one other thing I'd like to bring up, and that is like local food. Because this is something that, you know, is part of 820. It was part of the first sustainability plan that Matt and I put together. It was part of the sustainability metrics, but it's something that always seems to fall through the cracks. So I'm wondering if during our recruitment effort, if we can try to find somebody who's interested in local food and trying to see what can be done to support the 820 goals in that respect, because you know, it's not going to be the Energy Commission. I'm not sure. I mean, I've done a fair amount of research on it, and I have a group together who's interested, you know, including the people at Argus, Farmers Market, some of the local organic farmers associations, things like that. You know, the university and the university's food program, Project Grow, you know, and the people at you know, and Amanda Sweetman, who's at the St. Joe's farm. She runs the St. Joe's farm. So I think I already have a group of people together that could be a nucleus for a work group to work on that, but I don't have time to deal with that. And I don't know anybody else who has the interest and maybe the background to participate in that. So I'm hoping maybe we could consider recruiting somebody who's interested in that topic and promoting local food, because if you look at Project Drawdown, this is a substantial part of reducing carbon budgets, improving resilience, getting healthier diets, plant-based diets going, things like that. So I just want to throw that out there and see what people think. Shannon, you have your hand up. Oh, okay. Anybody? Okay. Again, it seems to like drop off the back of the wagon. Okay. All right. Well, does anybody want to bring up any other topics? I know I mentioned air quality. There's not much we can do about that, but it's in the back of my mind. And I think the phosphorus discharges and PFAS are going to be topics of a future commission meeting soon. I'm working on both of those because that's kind of things I'm working on. I'm the team leader on a Sierra Club grassroots network national team working on PFAS. And I've been working with several other nonprofits on those topics. So I think I can put together a program on PFAS as it's impacting the city's operations. And I just want to mention that the drinking water's kind of been dealt with at this point. We don't have any identified surface discharges, but we will have requirements for our wastewater and our biosolids discharges coming up really soon. So that's all I want to say about PFAS at this time. So, okay, I see several hands up. John Calloway, and then Kathy Wald and John Morsky. John.
Sure. Yes, just a quick update in terms of the search for the new resource recovery manager position for the city. That process is ongoing. There's been a couple of interviews. There's a couple more coming up, so it's ongoing. Don't have anything else.
John. Yep. Yeah, thanks. So John. So you're involved in those interviews and discussions. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good, excellent. Thank you. Thanks for that update. Anything else? Okay, so Kathy, and then John Mursky, and then Rita.
Just a reminder that the AG, Dana Nessel, would like to be invited to our meeting regarding PFAS. And also, when we look at air quality, I think that we should look at air quality in Southeast Michigan. Looking at just Ann Arbor air quality can be misleading, and we're not negatively impacted in the same way. And if one of our goals is equity, then I think it's important to look at the Detroit and the downriver population.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kathy, on that topic, I'll just mention this briefly. I've been mentioning this in the local Sierra Club meetings. There's actually, in the Ecology Center here, has done some things, because now you can get some really cheap portable monitors for both PM 2.5, PM 1.0, NOx and SOx pollutants. And I purchased a few myself from a company called Purple Air, and I'm working with those. And I thought it might be a good idea to try to include those in public schools that are near the Interstate 94 corridor. I agree with you. It's not such a particular issue here in Ann Arbor, and as we start electrifying things and not burning any more natural gas, our air quality will improve here. But the major problem is diesel traffic along Interstate 94. And if there's any schools nearby or communities, I think it would be good to try to place those monitors in those locations and try to get some citizens, some residents involved in monitoring air quality and reporting. Because the EPA's, because I've looked into this, and the EPA, their monitors are maybe 50 miles apart, and not in the places where you might expect them to be or might want them to be. So I think this is something we should all be mindful of, but I'm not sure exactly what the city can do about it.
Well, I'm concerned that if we increase our reliance on electricity and DTE burns more coal in the Detroit and downriver area, it's going to negatively impact some people. And I would hate to see that done, because there's already a serious air quality issue, as well as toxins in the ground in many of those low-income neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a problem, all right. But I think DTE, I'm not sure how much more coal they're burning, because they're already transitioning to natural gas. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to be mindful of it.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, but I think in terms of what Ann Arbor can do, I think that's what we could do, is try to increase the air monitoring locally here and provide some resources and education along the I-94 corridor. And actually, I wanted to reach this program through the HVG group into Ypsilanti Township and Ypsilanti, because their air quality is much worse than ours for various reasons. John Mursky, and then Rita Mitchell.
To follow up on that, the A20 has a pilot neighborhood program in Bryant, and I'm pretty sure Bryant is right there on I-94. Mm-hmm. And maybe we could do some air quality measurements there because of all the logistics and truck traffic. And I shared this with Steve yesterday. We discussed it together. He is generally aware of it too. I listened to a Freakonomics podcast the other day, and of all things, they covered cognitive decline due to exposure. Do you listen to it, Kathy?
Not yet, but I'm very interested.
Listen to it. Cognitive decline due to exposure to PM 2.5 particles, and not just long term. There can be poor air quality on a given day, and that will affect people's cognitive abilities on that day. And if you think about what the social cost of carbon is, we talk about lung impacts and cardiovascular impacts. But if you also think that there is a cognitive decline over the long term and also on individual days, especially also now with all the forest fires and things like that, this is just one more huge negative impact of burning fossil fuels and climate change and everything else. I didn't realize that there's actually that kind of impact with cognitive ability due to PM 2.5. Mm-hmm. So it's an episode within the last month. So if anybody's interested in listening to it, check it out. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Okay, thanks, John. Rita, you have your hand up.
Well, I just want to kind of echo the concern about kind of displacing our air problems to other areas. So if we electrify our cars, that's great. Our local air is a little better, but if it means that we're pumping out more particles in another area of the state, that's a real concern. So I think we all need to work toward, whatever that means. We've got to keep that in mind. But back to me and an issue of Chapter 40, which I neglected to send out to you all last month. So I'm going to send a message to the entire commission and those who are interested in reviewing the document. I will appreciate that. I will include a couple of versions and I'll explain them in an email to you. And those who are interested, I'll ask you to respond. And I would like to possibly be a little more responsible, maybe have 2 meetings by Zoom and a completion that perhaps we could review by this body next month.
Okay, thanks, Rita. So why don't we move on quickly? I want to end this meeting at 9. So let's move on to reports from committees, other commissions, council, and chair. If there's no other comments on these topics. Okay, I don't see anybody's hand up. So we've already kind of discussed the work groups and the committees. Other commissions. How about Shannon? Do you want to tell us about the Planning Commission activities?
Okay, Lisa, I'm looking at you too. I think things that relate directly to Environmental Commission. Not thinking of a lot of things that relate directly. I don't know if something comes up
does the infill development count? At the one out by Briarwood. Because it's
right. Yeah, so it's like one of the things that's really difficult in the city is to be able to, once you're zoned a certain way, to be able to make it more dense over time. And that's one of the ways that we are trying to figure out how to make things more efficient and have, you're using current infrastructure. There's just a lot of, it's better to do that than it is to build in a cornfield somewhere outside of town. And so there was an older condo association that's over near Mary Bestowell Park, not too far from Bryant School, actually, incidentally, also very near the highway. In fact, one side of it borders the highway. And they were able to zone it to be more dense and to have a former green space become more stacked flats And part of this worked because it was already next to a huge park. And so them having green space was a little redundant in terms of what was around them. They're also on bus lines and, things like that. And so it made a lot of sense to be able to slip these units in there. I think we have struggled with our dual goals of being able to be both affordable and sustainable at the same time. And I've kind of found that what we end up doing is sort of choosing one in terms of the theme of the project in front of us, because it's difficult to achieve both. It really is. So in this one, I would say it ended up becoming more leaning towards the affordable side of it and going with the density and all of the environmental benefits that happen because of more density in that way. Though we did go round and round about the EV ordinance and trying to kind of right size and tune what is possible, what is appropriate to ask for in different developments. We have a pretty clunky way of being able to get people to rise to the occasion for sustainability. We don't have a lot of, there's not a lot of agility that we have to be able to kind of fine tune things because our ordinances are our ordinances. And it made me feel like, boy, it'd be nice to be able to really have a more nuanced approach project per project, but it's really hard to do that in government. That's sort of what I feel like. Lisa, I don't know if you have any other comments around that.
No, I was just so pleased to see an infill project because we see so few of those.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a way that I think people are willing to accept density. And yeah, I agree. It was hard, not to ask them to like remake the whole development while they're at it, which made the project totally unsuccessful. So it, because our ordinances actually say that. So
right. So we kind of struggle with that sometimes.
We did.
About how to find that balancing act. But I think that's kind of the only thing I can think of that really applies, that would have any overlap with environmental concerns.
Well, other than the fact that when you all talked about the downtown, the housing that's going to go on the lot next to Blake Transit, there was a lot of talk about how do you make this work, given that there's going to be exhaust for some time until we electrify this. And I listened to the meeting. I was on vacation, and the thing is that the way it's going to happen is people aren't going to be able to open their windows, and but of course, if you live in Manhattan, you don't open your windows. So, it's a culture shift.
Well, and once we electrify, if all the buses get electrified, that's another thing.
And that was part of where they were going with it, but there are also a lot of concerns in the meantime, with the fumes going up and everything like that. And if it's affordable housing, does that mean you're just like layering on, poor air quality on top of that? And it's a great project in so many other ways because of all the nested uses. And it's very difficult to develop a site with outside of the city, meaning like it would be really tough for a developer to come up with a site plan for that thing that would have worked well with all of the city infrastructure around it in terms of the ATA and things like that. And so, it's tricky. And one of the things I would also just say that dovetails a little bit with what you were talking about before with the air quality piece, it's more of a comment on what we were talking about before rather than being planning commission, but that vegetation can actually make a really big difference with that air quality, at least in the right season. And that there's been studies done that really show like having a robust green buffer between the highway and the areas where people are makes an enormous difference. Mm-hmm. So it would be kind of interesting actually to even test that with some of the instruments that you have, Stephen. And the other school that I would recommend looking at would be Forsyth and Wines, which are truly right on the highway, whereas Bryant is a little bit further back. So, but yeah, air quality it's a tricky business with what we were talking about with the affordable housing downtown, which is essentially on that old Y lot across from the library.
And of course, that one, just to make sure that it's clear, that one is it's affordable and it's market. So
Yes, it's both.
the
It's two
fact that
towers.
there's going to be exhaust will be true for the market rate as well.
Yeah, right. There's
Yeah.
equal opportunity for air quality, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Kathy, you have your hand up.
Yes, given that there are buildings over bus stations in many other communities, as well as over freeways, isn't there the technology to do air handling and purification?
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not entirely covered either. It's open on sides and things like that. So maybe a little tricky to be able to completely capture everything. That's my memory of it, Lisa, is that it wasn't
right.
like
that
entirely,
the bus
covered and sequestered. So
but maybe I didn't understand Kathy's question, but definitely the buildings are going to be designed with, they're going to have super HVAC systems and triple or double paned windows. It's just that people will not be able to open their windows. And, for me, when spring and summer are here, I want my windows open, except for the mosquitoes this year who just dive bombed everything. But, so I think that is, and as I said, like if you live in Manhattan, you just take that for granted. You're not going to open your windows, but I don't think people in Ann Arbor think that way. And so it might be seen as a disadvantage for this housing. Yeah.
Oh,
so sometimes with LEED buildings and things like that, they people opening their windows makes it much more difficult to control how that all works too. And so many times you can't anyway when you have a high performance building. So not always, but many times.
Okay, Kathy, you have your hand up, and then John Mursky.
Well, my question was actually, isn't there technology to handle the air that's being exhausted by the buses, like under the awning area? I realize we have many buses that are out in the street as well, and I didn't know if it was a limitation on the technology or a limitation on how much money AAATA wanted to spend.
That I don't remember about whether,
okay.
I do know that there was definitely going to be air handling. I don't know to what extent, to how much they can,
Mm-hmm.
I know for sure there's a lot of parking around it too. And because it's not entirely covered, you can't kind of control everything, that's happening with that. So it'd still be kind of bleeding out the sides and things like that. So because it wasn't a truly enclosed system.
Okay. And I believe when the AAATA station was rebuilt, the expectation was that many of the buses would be down at the multimodal train station parking structure rather than at the current location. And so I don't know if long-term, if wherever the new train station is located, if that would divert some of the buses from that location. I don't know if that's still the plan.
We didn't get into that at all. So I have no idea. And I think that, clearly this was just our very first peek at the proposal. And so it still has a long way to go in the process. And we brought up all these kinds of issues around air quality. Several commissioners did. And so I think we're going to get a lot more information as it comes down the pike.
So, okay, thanks. And I didn't mean to give you all the questions, but
no, that's okay.
It's important. Thanks.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. No, I mean, it's not just diesel versus electric. I mean, you probably get some improvement just with natural gas or propane, And I know for some time you've been able to get buses that will burn propane or natural gas. So, but electrifying everything should help as long as we can do it on renewable sources.
Right.
So, okay, I'm sorry, John, you have your hand up.
Sorry to extend the conversation a bit, but I think this is pretty important.
Yeah.
you know, the 820 plan is pretty clear. Step one is 100% clean and renewable energy. And step two is electrify everything. And my view is that we should be looking at this building in the context of the 820 plan. This building is going to be there. I mean, let's be realistic. It's going to be there 60 or 70 years. And we should be doing everything we can to talk to AAATA to push them to electrify. And the city is doing everything it can to get to 100% clean and renewable energy. And if we're going to meet our 2030 target, we need to be doing both of those things. And in my view, the building should be designed recognizing that it's going to have a life of another 50 years after that point. And Shannon is absolutely correct. I'm not an expert in these matters, but I'm aware of what she said, that, you know, opening and closing of windows, particularly in certain seasons, can really throw off the HVAC system. But when we're talking with the developers, in my view, we should not plan this building based on the next 9 years, but based on the 51 years or the whatever 100 years after that, recognizing that we have a climate crisis and we have policy at the federal and the state and the city level that says we need to get rid of those diesel buses, period. If I can parlay that into then an update on the Energy Commission, unless there's anything else to be said. Okay.
Quickly respond that they have every intention of making this a sustainable high performance building.
Well, I mean, also in terms of, you know, opening windows and things like that too.
No, I get it, but just so you realize that that it's not like that was not discussed. They definitely want that to be part of things. They want to be able to follow 820, just so you have a sense that that was definitely part of the discussion as well.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Yeah.
So quickly, the Energy Commission is not meeting this month. We thought we would probably not be able to get a quorum. So we're not meeting. We're meeting in September. The primary focus of the September meetings are going to be two related topics, and that's going to be energy benchmarking / disclosure / energy audits and disclosure, where we're essentially trying to do the same thing to two different sectors. The commercial and multifamily is going to be governed by one ordinance, which is energy disclosure that enables then benchmarking, peer-to-peer, and then also obviously by the city, because that information will be in the public domain. And then there will be a second ordinance that is targeted to single-family residences, requiring an energy audit that has to be disclosed when a house is sold, so that information is known to the owner and to the buyer, or the seller and the buyer, and that hopefully will trigger energy improvement upgrades that are in support of 820. So that's the September meeting. The October meeting is going to be focused on municipalization. We're going to have presentations by Boulder. So we've had two presentations by Ann Arbor Public Power, one in February and one in July. In July, we had a first reading of a proposed resolution from A2P2. The October meeting, we're going to have representatives from Boulder, which had a failed municipalization effort. The legal structure there was one complicating factor. We don't have that same structure here, but there are other elements in terms that are common in terms of utility, let's say, resistance to the effort and what the utilities did, and you know, what they looked at in terms of what other communities did. So we hope to learn from them. And then we're going to have representatives from Winter Park, Florida, a smaller city, 30,000 people. So Boulder, just for comparison, is 330,000. So it's 2.5 times the size of Ann Arbor. The other city is smaller, but it's significant because it's one of the few successful municipalization efforts in the last decade. And so we're going to have them also present at the meeting with the idea that will hopefully better inform the commission and the community at large as to the pros and cons related to municipalization. Since I have two council members that are here, I would urge that council not force the Energy Commission to vote on the feasibility study that is proposed by A2P2 in September in light of the October meeting, which has been scheduled. I understand that there's a sense of urgency, but this is really a momentous decision. The feasibility study will cost $120,000 roughly alone. And that has to come from somewhere. It's going to come from the reserve. It's going to come from something else in the OSI or in the city budget. And so there is a, let's call it an opportunity cost related to that. And, one of the things we have to understand is, does that opportunity cost have any benefit in terms of the feasibility study leading to something that's going to be a tangible positive outcome for Ann Arbor, or just lead us into a dead end because DTE is going to do everything they possibly can to obstruct this. So there is, so we're going to, and from what I understand, there's going to be some discussion at the council meeting about imposing a later date on the Energy Commission to take action on this, possibly November or December. I think personally that makes a lot more sense. And then if the idea is that we should pursue a feasibility study, and I think there's a lot of arguments for doing that, then in my view, it would make sense that council also sets a timetable for when that RFP should go out, when it should be processed, when the results should be in, so that we act on this quickly, because again, this is important as far as the overall A20 plan. So those are the two things really that the Energy Commission is focused on here in the coming next 2 months. And I'm happy to take questions or comments.
Hey, John, Lisa, you have your hand up, and then Kathy.
What's the date of that meeting, John, in October?
The October is on 10th or 14th, I think it is. I can't remember. It's in Legistar. It's the second Tuesday.
It's the second Tuesday. Okay.
Yep. At 6 o'clock. We meet at 6 o'clock.
And we can, I can just attend like a member.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's October 12th is the second Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah, I have planning commission, but maybe something can work out.
Yeah.
Okay, Kathy.
I just want to say that I hope we can work in a collaborative way. And I've struggled both as a council member and previously as a commissioner between when do you want the agenda to be driven by the commission and when do you want the agenda to be driven by council back to the commission. And you always have to be aware of the cost in terms of staff resources. So it sounds like we've got a path that's going to work for everyone and minimize extra effort. So thank you.
Awesome.
Okay. Thanks, Kathy. So let's see. Council is the next item on the agenda is council report.
I can't think of anything.
Lisa?
Yeah, it's been so long since we had
a Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
I'm sorry, I should have prepared. But yeah.
That's all right. No, and Chair, I don't have anything to report either that I haven't said already. So, report from staff, Galen. You're muted.
I've already reported it, but I just want to say again that we'll be kicking off our second cohort of A20 ambassadors on September 15th. We have about 20 residents involved right now. And they'll be having an orientation / meet and greet. That's going to be on September 13th at the farmers market. And then also on September 23rd, we'll be over at U of M participating in Earth Fest. So we'll be over there tabling, a few of us.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Galen. Items for next agenda. The only one I remember off the top of my head is Bob Needham was inviting the Huron Valley Humane Society to talk about their opinion about the deer call. And we'll have a resolution that. I'm sure we'll have other things on the agenda item, but what I'm going to do is I'll circulate emails about that later, okay? So we can talk about what might be on the agenda there. A lot of it's going to involve what staff time is available, but we could talk about phosphorus, or we could talk about PFAS then. So, but I don't have a commitment yet from staff about what they can, if they can attend.
We'll have the zero waste resolution and white paper that night too.
Yeah. Okay, Rita?
So for me, I will do my best to bring back chapter 40 for next time.
Right. Okay.
And I do just want to make a comment to John, is that I have been following and been involved with the municipalization effort, and I hope that you and the Energy Commission can see it as a point of expression of concern for the urgency of the climate crisis in terms of the request that's been made of the Energy Commission. That's really, I think, what's behind it. That everybody's really concerned, and we'd like to move forward in a positive way.
I think, yeah, I don't want to speak for the commission, and I haven't frankly made up my mind, but I think there is value add likely in a feasibility study. My sense is that if we do a feasibility study, we should recognize that there's lots of different forms of municipalization. There's lots of energy assets that a municipal utility can own, everything from DTE's grid assets to things like virtual assets like aggregating demand response, to even doing things like having geothermal districts or wastewater districts. And so I think if we do a feasibility analysis, we should look at what the various options are, what their pros and cons are, what their including costs and benefits and things like that. And, you know, frankly, I think also, you know, we want to apply public pressure to DTE, and, you know, anything that we're doing along these lines also applies pressure to DTE, because I don't think any of us are satisfied with what DTE is doing. So there's points well taken.
I totally agree with that. And I believe that a feasibility study would bring out those multitude of issues that you talked. At least I would hope it would, because that's the best way for us to go forward.
Indeed.
Okay, Kathy, you have your hand up.
I just want to correct a statement I made previously, that Dana Nessel is interested in attending a meeting regarding phosphorus.
Well, I remember that. Yeah, thanks, Kathy.
Yeah, and I said PFAS. It didn't sound right when I said it, but I didn't correct myself.
No, I knew you meant phosphorus. Okay.
It's due to the air pollution.
That was recently done, so I can remember that. Recent enough. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And let's see. So that looks like perhaps a full agenda already, but I'll circulate ideas. I like to have these set up by topic, and I like to do them like 3 months in advance. So I'm going to start circulating emails among all of us to get input early on before the meetings. And the other thing is, we're going to try. I'm going to try to enforce getting the agenda in place and everything, the special presentations and everything, a week before the scheduled meeting, a whole week before the scheduled meeting, because it's been just a nightmare lately. And I think it's also going to be important in terms of, other logistics about organizing meetings. So I'll send an email to everybody later about that. So I'd like everybody to be involved in setting the agenda and reviewing it, but I'd like to have a deadline of a whole week before the meeting to get it finally in place and posted up on Register. So items. So the next item on the agenda is the next scheduled meeting, which is September 23rd at 7 p.m. That's the fourth Thursday of the month. So now we get to the second public commentary period. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. Please call 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 940-0438-4426. This information is also displayed on the meeting agenda and video feed. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments, and be patient. There can be a delay of up to 30 seconds before a connection is established. So is there anybody on the line yet?
No, there's no one for comments.
Okay. So in the meantime, I'd like to thank everybody for being part of this working session. I think it's good to have one of these at least once a year, so that we can talk about general directions and strategy and processes and procedures. And I'm always eager for feedback, positive or negative, as long as it's constructive. So is there anybody on the line as yet?
No.
Okay, well, thank you, Galen, and thanks everybody for your time and attention. See you all next month. Bye now. I call this meeting adjourned at 9:17 p.m.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Right.